So I was recently doing some consulting for a custom builder, and we were doing a deep dive into his numbers, and we unlocked about almost a half a million in profit potential. And I thought this would be a good example to walk through for everybody so that you can understand and learn kind of what we uncovered in this scenario, which is where is your profit potential, understanding your ratios. So we'll cover quite a bit here. We'll go over lifetime value, cost to acquire, front-end cash collected, and then where your kind of profit maximization zone is, and so that you can follow this example, apply it for your business, and then see where your profit maximization zone is. So let's start at the top, and we'll walk through some of the numbers that we covered. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out what your lifetime value of a customer is. And so for this particular builder, his average project size was about $1 million, and his gross margin was 22%. And so for him, that was $220,000. So that tells us what a customer is worth. Now, a lot of people will tell you that that customer is worth $1 million, right? That's the average project size. But we all know that cost of goods are involved. And so materials, labor, all of those things come out when we sign this project. And so we need to look at the gross margin. So, okay, an average project to this builder is worth $220,000 to him. Now we need to know, okay, but what does it cost him to get one of these customers? And so we're going to look at the next ratio or metric here, which is cost to acquire a customer. And so for this particular builder, we'll get to the number, but if you want to run this calculation for yourself, you need to add up all of your sales and marketing expenses for a given time period. And yes, sales and marketing. So we want to have all of our advertising, any of our website, our content, all of that kind of stuff, truck wraps, any printed material, all of that stuff you're going to include in your marketing bucket. If you have people on staff that spend time on marketing, their salary or a portion of their salary should go in this bucket, and then anyone in sales. So this is sales technology, but it's sales people. So if you're the owner, you're the only one selling, and you spend half your time selling, take half your salary and what you pay yourself and put that amount in this bucket. So you'll add up all your sales and marketing, divide that by the number of customers. So we'll do sales plus marketing divided by number of customers, and that will get you to your cost to acquire a customer. And so for this particular builder, his came in at 18.4K. So $18,400 to acquire a customer. You may be looking at that and going, holy cow, that's really expensive. That costs a lot to bring in a customer. Maybe, maybe not. This number alone doesn't tell you a whole bunch. And so what we want to do is look at a ratio. And so we're going to look at the difference and the ratio between our lifetime value, which for this builder was $220,000, and how much it costs to bring that in. Now, you might have looked at this number and thought, wow, that was really expensive. But now when we look at it in relation to 220,000, that looks pretty good, right? If we round, this is 20, what is that? Close to 10 to 1 there. And I've got my little cheat sheet over here so that I can make sure, but it's 12 to 1 is actually the ratio, 12.1. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take this number and divide it by this number, and then that ratio, LTV, to cost to acquire, and that is going to be 12.1 to 1. And so let's take a step back and look at what we've uncovered here. This is basically the engine that this custom builder has running right now, because the custom building and remodeling business is a sales and marketing machine, and then you've got projects and logistics on the back end. But you need sales and marketing to bring in projects, and then those projects happen, And so we want to see what is the ratio between how much it costs us to bring in projects and what are those projects worth to the business. And so in this case, we've got a nice ratio of 12-1, which means we put in $1 and we get $12 back. That's great. And so just to review some benchmarks, you want to be at least at 3-1. 6-1 or more is great. Then you're kind of looking at that ratio and saying, cool, I probably have some good opportunity to scale. At 3-1, you may still say, yeah, I've got opportunity to scale. It's going to a little bit depend on the size of your customer there. But at least 3-1, ideally 6-1 or more. When you see something like this, that's usually a good indication that if you want to grow, we just want to scale up our marketing and just do more of it. Do more, spend more, because we know we have this great machine where we put in $1 and we get 12 back. Okay, so that is the engine. And so we reviewed with this builder what's going on here. We bring in customers and they're worth a lot more. Good. So now, how do we bring in more customers? And we were talking through basically, what should I do? What should I do with this information once I've run the math? And so the next thing we wanted to look at was, okay, this is great. We've got a nice ratio, but how long does it take to get these $12, right? Because if you put in $1 and you get 12 back tomorrow, that's awesome. But if you get 12 back in 10 years, maybe that changes the equation. So we're going to look at front-end cash collected. And so to calculate this, we basically want to see how much gross margin do we pull into the business within about 30 days of signing the customer. So when we get one of these projects, we know it's worth $220,000, but we're probably going to bill the client over months or maybe over a year, depending on how long that project takes. And so we're not going to get all $220,000 right away. We've probably already spent the $18,000, right? Because we spent the money on sales and marketing to bring in the customer, we signed the customer, and then over the coming months or year plus, we're going to collect all of that money. So what front-end cash collected does is it allows us to see how much of this do we get quickly within about 30 days. And so for him, he has what we want to do is look at basically what is your deposit percentage. So to get front-end cash collected, you're going to take your lifetime value over here, and we're going to multiply that by your deposit percentage. And so for this builder, he takes about a 20% deposit. So we would do 220,000 times 20%, and that will give us how much front-end cash he brings in, which is $44,000. We spend $18,000. It gets us something worth $220,000. But in the first 30 days, we actually collect $44,000 in gross margin dollars. These are dollars that are covering overhead, that are going to profit, that we can use in our business. And so now we can look at a new ratio, which is how much front-end cash do we bring in compared to what it costs us to bring in that customer. And so we're going to take this 44,000 and divide it by the 18.4, and that is going to get us 2.4 to 1. So now we want to say, is this good? Is this bad? Let's analyze that. If you're at 1 to 1, you've basically broken even on your sales and marketing investment in the first 30 days. Remember, this number is within the first 30 days, and that's why we use this deposit percentage, right? You sign a client and you say, hey, we're going to collect 20% of the project, so that's what we're going to use to figure out our front-end cash. So if we have 1 to 1 here, that means we spent $18,400 to bring in the client, and then they pay us a deposit, and we look at the lifetime value times our deposit percentage, and that was also $18,400, then cool, we already covered our sales and marketing. as we continue to bill moving forward on that project, all the gross margin is where the profit is and the return is on acquiring that customer. In this case, he was sitting at a 2.4 to 1. That means he spends 18.4 and he more than doubles that within the first 30 days. That means if this is at 2 to 1, that customer that he brings in that's worth $220,000 and we collect 44 right away, that just paid for its own, like that customer paid for itself, but they also just paid for the next customer, right? Because if we just round this up to 20,000 for simple math, 20,000 of this pays for the first customer, and then we've got another 20,000, we can go spend that on sales and marketing and go get the next customer. So if the higher this ratio is, the more opportunity you can actually fuel your own growth rapidly, because as soon as you get a customer, it pays for the next one. And so then you get the next one, and then that pays for the next one. And you don't have to wait for months and years. If you don't have this kind of ratio, that's okay if this ratio is still really strong, because like we saw here, maybe this was 0.5 to 1. If that was the case, that just means that we're going to still have an amazing ratio here. We have a great engine in terms of the sales and marketing and what we get paid back for it. It might just take 6 months or 9 months to get paid back if we don't have a high front-end cash collected. Okay, so now we've got all the numbers on the table. These are the ratios that we walked through together. And then he said, well, what do we do next? What do we do with this information? And so when I see something like this, where I see a really positive ratio here and a really positive ratio here, it's basically a green light to say, hey, can we increase our sales and marketing? Because we know that we're going to get paid back quickly, and every time we invest in sales and marketing, we get a return back. But we also needed to look at kind of his current capacity. So one of the next questions I asked was, well, how many more projects could you take on without having to hire additional overhead? And so this is where we start to look at incremental gross margin and that profit maximization zone. And so this is, I think, a really important exercise, if you haven't done this in your business, is to look at your business and say, how many projects could I handle right now? So let's look at this and break it down. Okay, so for this particular builder, we wanted to look at his capacity. And so if we look at this as his capacity, which is how many projects can I handle? And so his max capacity was 8 projects. And he was currently sitting at 6. Oh, and then we also discussed his break even was 4. So basically right in the middle is the break even. So based on his overhead structure, his team structure, he needs about 4 projects, and anything other than that, he's going to be losing money. And so what we had to do was figure out his break even. He knew his break even, but the way you would do this is you would just take your overhead, and then you would divide that by your gross margin percentage. So we can just do this really quickly. Let's say your overhead is $100,000 a month, and your gross margin is, like this one is 22%, we'll do 20%. So we'll take our 100,000 and divide that by 0.2. So that gets you 500,000. So if your overhead is 100,000 for the year, then your break even is 500,000 at a 20% gross margin. You could change this to monthly. If your overhead is 100,000 a month, that means you need to be booking 500,000 per month, which would be 6 million for the year. And the reason is, if you reverse this out and you say, cool, I just did $500,000 in revenue, but I have a 20% gross margin, multiply those together, you get $100,000. And so you have $100,000 in gross margin, and that covers your overhead. So this gets you to your break even. So it's important to know for your current overhead structure what your break even is, because everything above that to your max capacity is that profit maximization window. And so for this particular builder, he was at about 6 projects. And so that's great. He's got this window in here is where he is making money. But he has capacity to do 2 more projects with his current overhead. And so he's making a profit, but any additional project, basically above the break even, is where we start dropping your lifetime value of a customer or your average gross margin to the bottom line. And so he had an opportunity here to get 2 more projects, which was $220,000, which is his lifetime value of a customer times 2. So that's $440,000 in profit potential. And so what we want to do is figure out, okay, what is my break even? What is my max capacity for my team structure? And we want to be hitting our max capacity, because this is where we're going to make the most amount of money for our current size and our current overhead structure. And so for him, what we talked through was, okay, how do we tap into this? And so we're going to go back to our sales and marketing, and we're going to say, which are the channels that are producing these customers? And so we can look at those channels and say, great, content marketing is producing these types of customers. So what can we do to double or triple down on that style of marketing? Or paid ads. Hey, paid ads are producing and we're getting, the same ratio there. Maybe we should just adjust the budget up and increase that. And so once you see this gap here, you can identify how much opportunity you have. And for him, he has $440,000 of opportunity. And so would you spend another $36,000, $37,000, which would be his average cost to acquire, to get another $440,000? That would basically drop $400,000 to the bottom line. That would be great. Would you even spend $100,000 to get those 2 more projects and get the additional $440,000? You'd spend $100,000 to make $440,000, so that would net you $340,000 to the bottom line. And so once you're above the break even, this is actually where you can get more aggressive in your marketing spend, because all of it's going to drop to the bottom line. You're basically saying, hey, I've got this overhead structure of $100,000, and if I need to fill this gap, I'm going to increase marketing, which is overhead. So this number will go up a little bit, but that's the only number that goes up, and then your gross margin drops to the bottom line. So for him, he's sitting on a great opportunity. Once you get these 2 projects and you fill them in, you've dropped this additional $440,000 to the bottom line. Now you've basically got a decision tree. And so you can optimize, or you can increase capacity. So once you have increased your sales and marketing, you maxed out your capacity, you're running at 8 projects, you're going, cool, this is great, everything's humming along, I'm making good money, my team is maximized, like I don't have any excess capacity in the system. And so now you can do this path, which is, how do I make even more profit at this level, which would be, okay, can I drive this number down, which would be looking at all of your sales and marketing and saying, can I get more efficient here? Which means either better marketing, so you're cutting waste and doubling down on only the things that are working, or better sales. Hey, I think we could improve our sales training, our sales process. I think we could close more deals with the same leads we're getting. We're just not working the leads hard enough, or we're not following the same sales process every time. both of those things would decrease this number, which would increase our profitability. Or we could say, you know what, I think we can get bigger customers. And so we could increase lifetime value. Maybe we can get our average project size from 1 million to 1.2 or 1.4. And if we maintain our 22% gross margin, this number is going to go up by 20% or 40% if we can get it to that 1.2 or 1.4. And so you can start trying to improve your engine by increasing this or decreasing this, and that would be in this optimize. Or you can say, love my engine. I've got 12 to 1 here. I've got 2.4 to 1 here. Things are going great. Let's just do a lot more of this. In that case, we would increase capacity. So then you might look at your team structure and you might say, cool, let's hire another project manager, or we need to hire somebody to take more phone calls in the office. And if you increase capacity and you say, cool, we're going to go down that path, you're going to add, and maybe this goes up to 12, but you had to add somebody to your overhead. And so you might have added a $10,000 a month position or something like that. And so the way this will work is you've got the 110, and then you've still got your 20% gross margin. And so it raises your break even. So this 500K is going to go up probably, what is that, 10%. So that's probably 550K. But we just unlocked 4 more projects that we can take on. And so we've got 440,000 times 4 in potential, profit potential. But we're not going to get there unless we increase our sales and marketing. So then we're probably going to have to say, well, we added this person, that increased our capacity. Now we have to add more marketing. You might add another 10 grand a month in marketing. So then you're going to take this and that'll go to 120. And so we just increased this 20% from the original. So that's going to go to 600. So this break-even line over here is going to go up. It's going to maybe move somewhere in here or somewhere in here. And you're going to have to run that number for your own business. So our break-even just went higher, but then we increased our profit potential by even more on the top end because we increased our capacity. And so usually when you hit this decision tree, when you go this route, you have to make several investments. And so your overhead jumps. You take these overhead leaps. And so it does increase your break even, but it also increases your profit potential in terms of dollars. And so you want to make sure when you do this, you have a good engine. And so you're looking at this ratio and this ratio. And if you have a good engine, then you have this opportunity to increase. If your engine isn't super great, you probably want to go this route first, optimize, get your engine running right, and then you can work towards increasing capacity. So for this particular builder, my recommendation was, cool, we've got 2 projects here that we could maximize your profit potential. You have a great engine running here. Let's increase your marketing and see if we can get more lead flow going so that you can close 2 more projects this year for another $2 million, $1 million each, and another $440,000 in net profit. So hopefully walking through this helped you so that you can run some of these numbers for your own business, see what your engine looks like, see where the opportunity is, run your break even, your max capacity, and then you'll be looking at this data and going, cool, I think I know exactly what I need to do next. I either need to increase my sales and marketing, or I need to fix my engine. Maybe my marketing is not bringing enough high enough value clients because my lifetime value is compared to what it costs to bring in is not high enough. Or wow, I didn't think I could charge 20% deposit. I need to increase my deposit percentage so I can improve my front end cash collected. So lots of moves on the board, but once you lay everything out, usually the answer becomes fairly obvious. So hopefully this helped, and we'll see you next time here on Builder Funnel TV.